Good morning. I'm Antoinette Mosley, the Vice Mayor of the City of Asheville, and I'd like to welcome you to the January 8th, 2026 Agenda Briefing Work Session. All council members and staff are participating virtually. This meeting is intended for discussion purposes only, and no formal actions or votes will be taken. In addition, no public comment is taken during this meeting. The live meeting will be streamed on the city's YouTube channel, accessible through the YouTube icon on the city's website or via the live stream. You also have the option to listen to the meeting live via phone by calling 855-925-2801 and entering meeting code 3417. Councilmember Sage Turner is traveling and will not be joining us today, and Mayor Manheimer will be joining us a little later. Council and staff, when I call your name, please say a quick hello. Councilmember Bo Hess.
Good morning.
Councilmember Bo Hess.
Good morning.
Councilmember Kim Roney. Councilmember Kim Roney. Councilmember Maggie Ullman.
Good morning.
Councilmember Shanika Smith.
Good morning.
Assistant City Manager Jay Dundas.
Good morning.
Interim City Manager Ben Woody.
Good morning.
City Attorney Brad Branham.
Good morning, everyone.
And City Clerk Maggie Burleson.
Good morning.
I will now turn it over to Interim City Manager Ben Woody.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and good morning, members of council. This is your agenda briefing for your January 13th City Council meeting, which will be next Tuesday. I'm going to move through the agenda today, your business agenda, pretty quickly. We're going to cover the agendas, excuse me, for the upcoming HCD and PED Council Committee meetings. And then finally, we're going to end with some other items updates from Emily Ball, who's going to talk about the upcoming point in time count, which we do annually here in Asheville. Chief Stepp with Asheville Police Department is going to talk about the Tangra outlets and the APD substation lease. And finally, we're going to take a moment to congratulate our incoming city manager, DK Wesley. So that's the plan for today. So as always, as I begin to move through the agenda items, please just stop me if you have any questions or if you want to cover something that we don't cover. So when you start your meeting, your day on January 13th, we'll begin with our first of many budget work sessions. So this is kind of our annual time to begin the budget process. So we'll have our first kind of introduction to the FY27 budget process, and we'll begin that at 3 p.m. in the council chambers. Moving on to consent agenda for your meeting, I'm going to cover 5 items today, and of course we can step back and cover anything that you'd like to talk about that I don't cover. So I'm going to start today with item E, and just want to make sure that our community kind of understands this funding source. So Asheville, we receive home funding through HUD, which is federal funding, and the city of Asheville is the participating jurisdiction for those funds. That means we administer and manage those funds. Those funds are distributed and used throughout a 4-county area. So this particular resolution is basically a budget amendment. So we have a affordable housing development called Fairhaven Meadows. It includes 42 units of affordable housing for families at 40 to 70% AMI. That initial cost of that project and funding amount was $1.1 million in home funds. However, as that project has advanced, the final contractual amount is $1.3 million. So basically, the HUD funds, we need about a $115,000 amendment to cover a gap in that project. And so as part of being the participating jurisdiction, you as city council have to approve that additional funding. However, what I want to make clear is those are consortium HUD funds. Those are not city funds. So again, you're allocating this additional funding as the participating jurisdiction, but this is not City of Asheville funds. So again, this is a project that was approved through the home HUD process. Item F is one we're going to cover. A lot of interest in that, and Chief Stepp is going to do that under the other issues section of today's agenda. So I'll hold off on that till then. moving through the agenda, we've got three kind of important and big transportation items that I think are good news items to share. That's items G, H, and I. So I'm going to cover all three of those. Item G is a contract that we're moving forward with to update the city's traffic calming policy. As council knows and hears often, traffic safety from our neighborhoods is one of their top issues. One of the things we'd like to do to help address some of those concerns is revise our traffic calming policy, which I would say is definitely in need of some updating. I think we have the opportunity to make that policy not only more clear for residents, but also for city staff and city council, with an outcome of trying to reduce some of the delays and confusion we've had in the past around implementing traffic calming measures. So what this final policy will do will improve how we evaluate and respond to requests from neighborhoods. It'll hopefully create more options for traffic calming beyond just speed humps and speed cushions. And obviously we want to streamline our city process to make sure we're more efficient with moving forward with traffic calming requests. So I think from a resident's perspective, what you can expect is a little more predictable timeline and outcome when requests are made for traffic calming. So we're really excited about that project. And I know council is as well, because we get a lot of emails on this. Item H, another good news item, is the D Review Complete Streets project. This is an NCDOT project that is programmed in their transportation improvement program. So that state funding programmatic process that DOT uses, this is funded partially through that. It does require a 20% local match, which the city will provide at about $2.9 million. That's programmed in our CIP budget already. And really the great news about this D Review Road project is that it was prioritized as number 2 in our GAP plans pedestrian plan project prioritization list. So we are, this is a good example of implementing that GAP plan that was adopted a few years ago. And D Review Road in particular is a main east-west connection from West Asheville to Patton Avenue and Haywood Road. That road currently has no bicycle or pedestrian facilities. It has actually 8 transit stops located along the corridor. And of course, as council knows, there's a history of residents in the neighborhoods in that area asking for these types of safety improvements. So we know this has been really important priority for council. We know you've committed to funding this. So we're really excited to be moving forward with getting some pedestrian infrastructure on that critical corridor. And then finally, item I is another partnership with DOT, another exciting project. This is for the design and construction of a bike and ped bridge that will parallel the existing Craven Street Bridge. And if you've ever walked across the Craven Street Bridge, that's kind of a treacherous experience as a pedestrian. So this is a great improvement or asset. It'll connect us, from either side of the French Broad River in a safe way that pedestrians can use. Similar to the last project, it's federally funded, but requires a 20% local match. That's just over $2 million. That also is programmed in the city's CIP. And the way this is a little unique, so the way this one will look is construction's estimated to be complete in 2031. So it's a pretty big, complicated project. I will say that when it's done, the city will have to accept this bridge into our maintenance program. So as we move through the coming years, we'll need to start programming maintenance funds for this bridge. As council probably is aware, bridges can be pretty expensive pieces of infrastructure to maintain. But nonetheless, 3 great pedestrian-oriented transportation projects. And Councilwoman Roney.
Thanks, Ben. I'm really excited about this one and the MPO on this one. And to speak to the neighborhood connect, there are folks that will be able to connect on this major greenway corridor, but also road corridor. Education opportunities like UNCA and AV Tech.
Councilwoman Roney, you're cutting out a lot. I don't quite get the question, but would you like to maybe try again?
I've changed my Wi-Fi setting. Can you?
No, it's still doing the same thing, Kim. We're having a hard time.
No, it's still doing the same thing.
I'll email my questions to
Okay.
Councilman, only real quick, we're getting an echo too, but are you asking about the Craven Street item? So maybe real quick, Ashley, we have Ashley Hare on the call, who's our transportation director. Ashley, could you just give a quick update on kind of some of the pedestrian benefits and kind of why this is an important project and some of the outcomes we can
For
expect?
Craven Street?
Yes, please.
Yes, it'll be connecting the greenways there on either side of the French Broad River, and a real key element of the pedestrian network through that area. And fortunately, it will touch down on both sides on city-owned property, so that will make the implementation a good bit easier from that perspective. But we are going to be working closely with DOT on the design and the implementation and the other aspects of that design and construction process. But we're happy to answer your question if you wanted to email it to us.
Thank you, Ashley. And Councilman Roney, if you have, of course, outstanding questions, we can get those via email. And let me have it in the chat. So Councilman Roney's question is, I support this partnership with DOT and MPO. My question, does staff plan to speak about this transportation connection with neighborhoods, businesses, and schools?
Yes, absolutely. The engagement will be part of that, and we are going to be working with Cape Department to develop that strategy and the plan for what that engagement looks like. Absolutely.
Thank you, Councilman Roney, for adapting through some difficult technology. We appreciate the question. So I'm going to move on. The last item I plan to cover on consent today is item K, and this is a fairly technical item, but also a really critical one. This is a contract that kicks off the initial phase of a stormwater system inventory and assessment. And the contract totals $900,000. So it's a pretty big contract, but it's funded through a mix of grant funding and city stormwater fund balance. The last time that we did and this is will be a comprehensive assessment of our stormwater system. The last time that we did a survey, kind of a citywide survey of our stormwater systems, was the late 80s into the early 90s. So it's been a pretty long time since we've looked at the stormwater system comprehensively. A lot of the old data is inconsistent and incomplete. We've had improvements to the system over the years. Some of those have not had the appropriate inspections or post-construction surveying. So I think this is going to really help us begin to get a better understanding and have a comprehensive mapping of our current stormwater system. This will also allow us to begin to look at standardized infrastructure condition assessments, more watershed-based planning, and ultimately create opportunities for us to invest in the stormwater system in a way that results in increased resiliency, equity, and sustainability. So this is a pretty complex study, but really is the first step in a modern effort to try to begin to address some of our aging stormwater infrastructure. So we're pretty excited about this effort as well. Any questions on those items or anything else on consent today? Okay, hearing none. We do have one presentation and report, and I think this will actually pair well with our budget work session we're going to have early in the day, but we'll have Eric Kreger from the Buncombe County Tax Office, who will provide an update on the 2026 reappraisal process. I think this is going to be really information-based and try to improve not only our understanding, but the community's understanding of really what that reappraisal process will look like and what to expect from it. We've got, moving forward to public hearings, we've got 3 public hearings on our agenda. I'm going to cover items A and B, then I'm going to ask Brad Branham to talk about item C. But real quickly, public hearing items A and B are what's called straight rezonings. So what that means is, since there's not a conditional zoning, you're not going to see a site plan. You're not going to be able to have conditions. This means that if they are approved, the owners of those properties would simply be able to develop them as the base zoning district allows. And so for item A, the primary difference between the RS8 they're requesting in the NB district that exists is that the RS8 district will allow for the construction of single-family detached homes, while the NB district does not. So I think what this straight rezoning signals is that a move from a potential commercial use to a residential use. That's the primary difference. For item B, which is previously approved as a conditional zoning and required the construction of a new building, what the applicant's requesting for this item is to go back to the general use district, which essentially allows them to occupy the existing building with a by-use right. So any questions on A and B? If not, Brad, I'm going to turn it over to you for item C.
Thank you, Ben, and good morning, council. I think I can be fairly quick with this. Item C is a mandatory technical amendment to your UDO. As many of you probably already are aware, the state legislature passed a few omnibus bills at the end of their most recent session. One of those items particularly affected and resulted in this particular change, which is the prohibition now existing at the state level against waiting periods following the withdrawal or denial of any sort of a development application or a zoning application. We see this most often with rezoning applications. Up until now, anytime one of those was denied by council, there was a mandatory 1-year waiting period before a new application for that property could be brought. The state legislature has now prohibited those kind of waiting periods. So this update essentially removes that language from our local code so that we can be consistent with the state law. The effect of this going forward, now that we would be consistent with the new state law, is that any application which is withdrawn or denied could come back immediately without a waiting period. I'm happy as always to answer any questions any of you have about this.
Thank you, Brad, for that update. So that concludes our review of the council agenda for next week. So I'm going to move on to council committees. And I of course, am the liaison for the 2 council committees, so I'm just going to keep moving. Our first council committee meeting that we're going to review is HCD, which is scheduled for Tuesday, January 20th in the morning. And then I'll review PEDE, which is scheduled for the same day at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I'll note these are very much draft agendas. The way the sequencing of the dates work is we're a little bit ahead of finalizing the council committee agendas, and we're still meeting with the chairs to do that. So I just want to let the community know that when the final committee agendas come out, they could look slightly different, but we feel like this is a pretty good representation of what to expect. So I'll start with HCD. At our HCD meeting, we're going to have Emily Ball today to talk a little bit about the point in time count, but we'll also have Emily Ball at HCD in January to give a more detailed update on the efforts and progress of the continuum of care, which is the body that kind of oversees the response to our homelessness issues here in Asheville and Buncombe counties. So we'll have an update from Emily on that. Another thing we're going to talk about, and this is on your 8-week agenda, you see there is a public hearing on some changes to our accessory dwelling units ordinance. Prior to that public hearing, we're going to have a stop at HCD to talk about the ADU regulation and some of the impacts to non-conforming structures, So we'll have our planning staff at HCD at that January meeting to work through the P&Z recommendations, as well as have a conversation about those changes that are proposed. And I'll stop there, and Councilwoman Mosley.
So I just feel like this will be a good opportunity to kind of correct a narrative that I've been hearing, in particular, it's about ADUs. So there is a narrative, a false narrative that indicates that this matter, which was supposed to come before us at a previous meeting and was continued to the next meeting, was done so at the behest of Legacy Neighborhoods. Can you confirm that it was actually staff who made the request to continue the ADU discussion?
I can confirm staff, and I can actually confirm that it was me that made that request.
Okay. Thanks. Just wanted to clear that up. Thanks, Ben.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, so again, we're looking, good opportunity to have a conversation with HCD on this topic. Next item is CDBG DR housing programs. And again, we're still kind of finalizing what that'll look like. But I mean, one thing that this committee is going to see will be pretty regular updates from Nikki Reed and her team about our progress on DR housing program. So we'll have a little more to share on that, but we do plan on spending some time on how those programs are going. And then lastly, kind of a continuation of previous conversations is we've been at HCD discussing some of the impacts and perhaps strategies to address and, you know, obviously reduce anti-displacement in legacy neighborhoods or, and I think, Madam Chair, or for HCD, that I believe what we're going to do is have a representative from the Legacy Neighborhoods Coalition, along with staff, kind of give an update on some of the progress that we're making in terms of beginning to address some of the anti-displacement concerns.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so we're still putting that together, but that's what you can look at or look forward to on HCD. So if there are no questions on that, I will move to PEDE. And so we've got three items on that agenda. We're still, again, kind of working through what that's going to look like. There's a lot of things happening at PEDE. So that's a very, very busy committee, like all our committees are. But the first thing we want to talk about at PEDE is we're going to have, and really excited about this, and we're going to have Nikki Reed and her team from CED provide an update on recommendations for the small business support program. So that is one of our first DR funding initiatives that we're able to roll out into the community. And that'll be, principally will be grants that are that subrecipients will administer and hopefully will, you know, aid in and support our economic business recovery. So we'll have staff there to review some of the subrecipient proposals and how we're proposing to award that funding. Prior to that meeting at PEDE, we'll also have the same conversation with the Economic Recovery Board. So this is a good example of working through council's recovery board appointments to our council committees. So again, we're optimistic. This is kind of hopefully the last step before we bring this to city council to award subrecipient contracts. We're also going to have our sustainability department, CAPE, and capital departments are going to give an update on resilience hubs. I know that's been a hot topic and something we really saw the potential for how those resilience hubs can work and be impactful following Helene. So we'll have staff at the PEDE committee to begin talking about what that project can look like and what to expect in the coming months. And then finally, we are going to have an update from our sustainability department on the carbon plan, integrated resource plan, and what this basically is information about the 2026 Duke Energy process and a desire for intervention by Buncombe County in the city of Asheville. So let's see, I see Councilwoman Roney, you may have put a question in the chat. Did staff success, let's see. Oh, that's for, excuse me, that's for Tanger. So I will save that for Chief Step. So let me pause there. So that is the review of our PEDE agenda. Any questions on that? I know we've got a lot of substantive information on these council committees. A question from Councilwoman Roney regarding Duke. How might this help reach our carbon reduction goals? Let me see who we have. I do not know the answer to that, Councilwoman Roney, so we'll have to follow up on that. I don't see Kiara on the call today. But good question.
This is on the IRP stuff. So this is really us maintaining our longstanding advocacy at the state level. And at the state level, Duke is regulated by the Public Utility Commission. And so are there direct things in this current package? I don't know specifically, and Kira could get to this, but this is really reaffirming and continuing to allow us to have advocacy presence at the state level.
follow-up question from Councilman Maroney is why wouldn't we add?
Add what?
What does that mean?
Why wouldn't add to matters that would help reach our goals?
I mean, fundamentally it would, because it could be addressing different regulatory dynamics for which we're part of, but that's like at a conceptual vision level. Us advocating will always be supporting our goals, but we need to hear from Kira is like, what are the specific policy items right now? And there always are stuff when we're standing up for ourselves that have impact on municipal rates, but also on the like renewable energy market and the demand side management market. So I think at a high level, yes, us participating and advocating at the state level contributes, but is it specifically going to have any policy topics right now that would change regulatory dynamics to impact us? I don't know. So, and we can talk about all this in committee.
Yeah, thank you for those questions, Councilman Roney, and the response, Councilman Ullman. And we'll we can prepare ourselves to have those discussions at committee. And I'll jump ahead a little bit. And this is an item that will come to full council on January 27th. So we'll have a little time to work through this at committee and then prepare for full council. Okay, I'm going to move to the 8-week agenda. Couple of things on that I'll cover. Want to note there are 2 items on PEDE, the Small Business Support Program. So the awarding of the subrecipient contracts and the intervention in the Duke Energy Carbon Plan. Both of those items will be at council committee and then be at full council on January 27th for decisions. Haven't talked about this in a while, but at your January 27th meeting, you'll have a report, an annual report that's required from the Asheville Downtown Improvement District. So we'll have a chance to take a look at some of the accomplishments of that body and what they've done under that contract, and probably somewhat of a look ahead about other things they plan to do. So you'll get your annual update from the ADID at your January 27th meeting. And again, as we discussed earlier, provided we get recommendations from HCD, we'll have the accessory dwelling units matter that will come back to full council as a public hearing, and that is scheduled for your January 27th meeting. Another item is council members. You had previously approved staff to negotiate an economic development incentive grant for Project Vessel, which I'm happy to say we're moving forward. That project is moving forward, and therefore the incentives moving forward. So you'll have the required public hearing on that incentive at your January 27th meeting. That's a great news item. Again, appreciate council supporting and investing in our local businesses. And then finally, always fun, we'll have our first budget public comment scheduled for January 27th. Any other questions on Jade has well, let's see, we got Jade and then Council Member Hess.
Hey, Ben, I may have missed it, but I wanted to highlight that January 27th meeting is at 10 a.m.
That's a really important point that I did miss. So January 27th, that is a 10 a.m. meeting. And that is because council members want to be able to, and staff be able to participate in the point in time count, which you have always done as the council. That actually happens that night. So if we had the meeting in the evening, anybody that wanted to attend the council meeting would not be able to participate in the point in time count. So good catch on that, Jay. That is a 10 a.m. meeting. Councilmember Hess.
Thank you, Ben. Regarding the ADUs, I know we had continued them twice at our council meetings. What was the reason that we continued them and then that we're hearing it at HCD before it comes to council? What was the reason?
So the reason for continuing that is twofold. Number one is, staff made a recommendation. It went through the Planning and Zoning Commission. They made an altered recommendation. So right now you have different recommendations from planning staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is good. That's the way the process is supposed to work. We've taken the time as staff to try to find ways to honor both those recommendations. So we've put a little more work into how we can make this ADU amendment work, but also be reflective or try to find some consensus between both recommendations. So I think it's just a little more effort into developing the policy. We've also used that time to have some additional conversations with stakeholders or people that either supported or had concerns with the amendment. So I think we've used the time, Councilmember Hess, to, I hope, develop it into a little more workable policy and ordinance change. And I think the HCD meeting is just a committee stop to have some additional conversation about that. And of course, from staff perspective, we would use that committee meeting as an opportunity to get some feedback and make any adjustments. Go ahead, Councilmember Hess.
Okay, so in other words, we were delaying it so that we made sure we engaged the legacy neighborhoods and address those concerns, correct?
Correct. Trying to build some consensus around this amendment in a way that's kind of captures some of the concerns we've heard. It's what we do with most zoning text amendments.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on the 8-week? Okay. If not, I'm going to take a break from talking. Like I've done a lot of it, and I'm going to, at this point, turn it over to Emily Ball, who's going to give us an update on the point in time count. So Emily, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you for being here.
Great. Good morning. Thanks for inviting me. I want to say, first of all, I'm so proud to work at the city. I appreciate so much what you all do related to homelessness. And Ben was just mentioning that you've modified your meeting schedule in order to participate in the point in time count. That's tremendously supportive and engaged. And I appreciate your leadership on this issue in our community. Point in time count is happening in a couple weeks. As you know, this is just a bit of background about what that count is. It is a single night census of people experiencing homelessness in the COC. You'll recall that's Buncombe County is the geography. So Asheville Buncombe Continuum of Care is our COC geography. I'm so sorry. I see Council Member Hess, you have a hand raised. Is that for me? Perhaps not. The single night census of folks experiencing homelessness in the COC. This is a federal requirement for all COCs to complete during the last 10 days in January. And then those results can inform our planning, both at the local level and at the federal level. So locally, results will be reported to the COC this spring. And then those same results will be reported to HUD to aggregate into the annual homelessness assessment report, which goes to Congress to inform a national snapshot of homelessness across the country. That indirectly, ultimately helps inform resources available to communities based on a picture of the national state of homelessness. The count will cover the full COC geography, so all of Buncombe County. That means we'll have specific teams going to Barnardsville, for example, Swannanoa, making sure that we have a clear coverage across that full footprint. The count is specific to people who are staying in emergency shelter, transitional housing, or people who are unsheltered. There's a lot of detail from the federal government about all of these definitions. And then the data are collected from the Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS, for HMIS participating programs. So meaning if we have a shelter that already enters data into HMIS, they don't do anything additional on the night of the point in time count. We're able to just grab that data out of the system. For projects that don't participate in the HMIS and for the unsheltered count, we collect that data via surveys that are conducted by volunteers. The survey includes household composition, demographics, homelessness history. And surveys are, of course, voluntary and confidential, and only de-identified aggregate results are shared. One thing that means is that, as you know, the point in time count is never going to be perfect. Show me a perfect data set. Point in time count is never going to be perfect, but it is a good snapshot of homelessness in our community, a good comprehensive picture of who's homeless at any given time, and also gives us good comparative data year after year to understand what trends look like as homelessness evolves in our community. This year's point in time count is happening January 27th and 28th. So counting where folks are sleeping on the night of the 27th. So that day after count on the 28th is asking about where people slept the night before. That is specifically for the unsheltered count, and we'll share this information out with you afterwards. A process improvement this year is that we're having volunteers sign up for the very specific geography that they want to cover and the specific team that they want to participate in. So the links in those slides will take you straight to a volunteer sign up where if you're interested in participating, you can select which part of the community you want to be in and select folks that you want to conduct those surveys with. We're always looking to match someone who has experience doing this and experience in engaging with folks who are unsheltered with someone who may be new to participating in the count. And then there are lots of other ways to support the count as well. We have, this is also new this year, we have a wish list going for donations for the unsheltered count. We always hand out supplies for folks during the street count to express appreciation for their participation in that. At the COC membership meeting in a couple weeks on January 22nd, we'll have folks bringing donations. We'll have donations that have already been collected at that meeting, and COC members will spend some time organizing those supplies, creating survey packets, and preparing for the event. I'm happy to answer any questions about the point in time count. I have one other slide unrelated to this, but want to pause to see if you have point in time questions.
Okay, it looks like Councilwoman Roney may have a question, or at least has the ability to ask a question now.
Yeah, I was just letting y'all know that I've called in so you won't have to read my questions out of the chat anymore.
Great. Good. Any other questions for Emily? Okay. Emily, as always, thank you so much for being here, and we all really appreciate your work on this, on this important topic.
Thanks so much. I actually have one other slide unrelated to the point in time count.
Sorry to cut you off there. Yep.
So lastly, just want to share a quick update with you about the COC's work related to the increase in unsheltered homelessness in West Asheville. Just want to keep you in the loop about activity that's been happening through the COC in that area. The COC board began engaging on that increase this fall. I think it was the August meeting when that first came forward. The board established a working group of board members to develop a 3-part response. So this has all been working group that then has brought recommendations back to the COC board. The first was to increase emergency shelter. We literally just do not have enough shelter beds in our community right now based on the need. And so first was to increase emergency shelter. The board directed the Code Purple work group, which was developing the plan for Code Purple for this season at the time, to be sure that they included a nightly winter shelter option. So not only when Code Purple is called based on temperature parameters, but making sure that shelter was available nightly through the winter in response to that increase in need. And the board was able to do that because they directed CDBG DDRF funds that had previously been dedicated to emergency shelter to directed that to make this effort possible. That CDBG DDRF, you may recall, this happened immediately after Helene, but that is declared disaster recovery funding that came to the city. You all earmarked $250,000 of that for emergency shelter, and at the time we expected that to be needed to continue Red Cross disaster shelters after Red Cross wrapped up, the Gold's Gym shelter, for example. We were able to do that with other resources and didn't need to use CDBG DDRF for that purpose, but it had continued to be held for direction from the COC board. So they were able to deploy those funds to make nightly winter shelter available this season. That specifically resulted in 50 additional beds that are open nightly since November, operated by Safe Shelter with high utilization. I just looked at the data this morning and they have had one single night so far this winter where they did not reach capacity. So really extraordinary demand and utilization for those beds. Second strategy, yes. No, okay. Second strategy developed through the COC was to increase street outreach. The COC board issued a request for proposal for collaborative street outreach, so multidisciplinary among multiple partners, to add street outreach capacity, specifically including evenings and weekends. That was identified by the working group of the board that most of the outreach in our community is happening daytime business hours. And so trying to fill a gap in evening and weekend coverage. Excuse me. Yes.
Just wondering, any particular parts of town where you've increased the street outreach?
Excuse me. Yes. The RFP specifically named, so all of this was West Asheville response, and the RFP specifically named Haywood Road, State Street, and Patton Avenue between Goodwill and Haywood Road.
Okay, thanks.
So the RFP was issued for that multidisciplinary outreach proposal. This, again, was the COC board directing city ARPA funding to make that possible. So that was city ARPA funding that you all had previously authorized based on COC recommendation to dedicate to supportive services that had not yet been deployed through the COC. That's $222,000 that's available in that city ARPA funding. And the board is considering a proposal at their meeting at 4 o'clock today in response to that RFP opportunity. Yes, Councilmember Hess.
Hey, Emily, thank you so much for your work on this. This is amazing. The outreach team, what are they doing? So, like, what are they asking? What are the resources that they have? Kind of, what's the outreach look like?
The outreach looks like direct engagement with folks who are unsheltered to do immediate, well, let me say in theory, based on the RFP and the proposal received. Obviously, this still has to be approved by the board before it would be active, but direct engagement with folks who are unsheltered, immediate problem solving. And I would say that's both problem solving the person's immediate safety needs. So often there's, there are immediate, maybe wound care, first aid needs, something like that. But then, excuse me, but then also working to identify other options for folks, particularly accessing emergency shelter. There's also a diversion component, diversion meaning can we help divert you from the homelessness response system by solving that problem that you're experiencing in another way. So that often means reconnecting with friends or family, for example, some mediation around that. But just really figuring out what's happening with that household and working to connect them with resources. Absolutely providing transportation is a key part of that, and certainly connecting them with shelters. So I think there is a real relationship between these first two strategies through the COC between new emergency shelter beds and new street outreach. Street outreach has to have something to offer someone, otherwise there's, they have a hard time getting, making progress.
Okay, sweet. So, say they ran into someone who needed help, maybe navigating the Social Security apparatus or needed an ID, they would maybe help them access emergency shelter and then team them up with a social worker or case manager to help navigate that.
Absolutely right.
That's amazing. Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly, third prong of the strategy was to improve needle response. There's been quite a bit of needle littering concern in West Asheville. So the board working group engaged multiple partners related to that, including Buncombe County Public Health and other partners in expanding services, coordinating needle litter cleanups, and then distributing sharps containers. So engaging with businesses, for example, to ask if they'd be willing to have a sharps container installed to create alternative opportunities for people to dispose of that waste. Yes, Council Member Hess, is your hand still up from previously or new question? Council Member Roney.
Thank you, Emily. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go from most recent to where you started. Regarding needle response. So I do neighborhood cleanups pretty regularly in the Haywood Road and West Asheville corridor with multiple partners and with neighborhoods and with individuals and myself. And the biggest problem that I see consistently throughout, whether it's a large group of people helping or one or two people, is where to put them. So having additional sharp containers on private and public partnerships that makes sense. But then what? They like if you were collecting recycling indefinitely, you'd still need a place for that to go. Like, how often do they get
Empty.
collected, or like what has been happening is I pick them up or I collect them with neighbors, and then I take them either to a partner, or I have to take them to WinCap, or I have to take them to the transit center. And even that container, it's small enough that if we have a lot, we run into capacity issues. So having a place to put them, huge, but then they will fill up. So what happens next?
They are being emptied on a regular basis, and I don't know more detail than that, but I'm happy to follow up on that and get that information to you.
So it was with partners.
I'm sorry.
So we're relying on partners.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, that makes sense. And having more information to be able to share with the public is helpful. So because we have this focus on West Asheville, I'm sure other neighborhoods or corridors are going to have issues too. So this is a great opportunity to see like what's working, and then how's it going with us letting people know what to do, and then I imagine there'll be a demand for it to expand and grow. Regarding,
Can I say in response to that my understanding is that Buncombe County is willing and able to distribute Sharps containers as people have interest in allowing one of those to be installed. So I think there is a lot of opportunity there. And then there's also opportunity to partner with some of the folks you named. WinCap Sunrise certainly is part of that county, who offer those syringe services, who could support emptying those containers. And I, again, can follow up on additional detail about how that's working right now.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Regarding the street outreach, it really resonated that if they don't have resources to connect people with, including emergency shelter, then it limits their success. But backing up to the emergency shelter, I had an impromptu meeting unplanned, with 4 people that were accessing the emergency shelter with Safe Shelter, our partner, as we were getting off the bus together. It was about a half an hour. And one of the things that I heard was because so many people were displaced by Hurricane Helene, they were looking for places that had both safe places to be and resources. So connecting the 2 point in time counts, it's unsurprising me at the last point in time count that there weren't more people to count when I was involved with the count around the Aldi and Walmart off of Tunnel Road. Because it didn't have those 2 things, safe places and resources, because those stores were closed at the time. So that may change in the point in time count this year. But then it also is connected to why we see more people in West Asheville who were looking for a place that was safe and also had resources. What I learned from these individuals was that they were like, is this option going to stay open more than just the winter? And so, because this is the COC, I'm not asking you to answer all those questions right now, but I am curious when we might get a bigger COC update for council, maybe some data on that high use of the emergency shelter, and then also what's going on with the Ramada. Like, what is the timeline? Are there deadlines to the funding and the permitting and the partnership? Because I thought that was supposed to, help with some of the demand for safe places to live and shelter.
Great. I'm happy to speak to that. I'm surprisingly bad at a multi-part question, so if I leave out a part, please bring it back up. But the shelter is not. This is the shelter on New Leicester Highway that Safe Shelter is operating through the Code Purple and Winter Shelter planning process, and with that. CDBG DDRF funding is specific to the winter, so is not slated to continue past the spring. Concurrently, there is, as is always true with Code Purple, Code Purple is a specific cold weather initiative. Concurrently, though, the COC does have an emergency shelter development work group that's meeting every other week, very active in pursuing that. They shared an update with the COC board at the December meeting, and we'll continue to develop that planning process further. I know that Dr. Jim Hardy, who's chairing that, has met with several of you to get your input and to share their progress on that. I don't think that it is feasible for that plan certainly to shape up in time, so that timing coincides with the conclusion of Code Purple and winter shelter. But the objective with that emergency shelter development work group is to establish a permanent emergency shelter with adequate capacity in our community. And as you know, that is work that takes time to do well. So it is happening, and we'll be able to continue sharing those updates as they progress. On the Ramada, as a reminder, is slated to become affordable housing for veterans and for folks with not. I'm sorry, let me start over. The Ramada is slated to become affordable housing, half of which will be dedicated to veterans in the HUD BASH program through the VA. My understanding about that I don't know the specific timeline, but my understanding is that they are in motion now. They had been, it took a while to do the work that needed to be done with the Housing Authority to confirm those vouchers based on Helene, based on leadership transition at the Housing Authority. But I believe that partnership is strong, and that's moving forward now.
Thank you. And then my last just wrap up of that is that this is a lot of information in an agenda briefing. And so I expect it would be helpful for council in some way to have some more updates around COC. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Hess.
Thanks, Emily. Just to piggyback off what Councilmember Roney was saying, I know you mentioned that I guess businesses can get the sharps boxes from the county. During my cleanups, I've had the same experience that Councilmember Roney has, that often the one that is in West Asheville is so small and often filled. Is there a way that the city can get those sharp boxes from the county and we can put some more up and maybe make them a little bit bigger?
I don't know if that's a question for me, actually. I don't know, Ben or Jade, if you might want to speak to that. I think, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You can finish your thought, Emily, if you want to. You may not want to.
Well, I was just going to say, I think container availability is certainly not an issue. Just any entity would need to have control of the property to make those containers available, which has been part of the strategy in engaging folks who own property in West Asheville to make those resources available there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say, Emily. Then I would add to that, it's possible, yes. So the container availability is one, but then, you have to, somebody has to be responsible for maintenance and emptying. And so there's a little bit of, preparation that would have to go into that. So, because remember, I guess we could take a look at that and see what options would be, or at least outline what it would look like to try to increase containers. But there is a set of functions and steps that have to happen to do that. So
Thank you. I think it would be beneficial for the community to have safe places to, one, empty in them, but also to put those sharp.
thank you.
Councilmember Ullman? You're on mute.
Thanks. Good morning. Thanks for being here. Appreciate getting an update on this. I know that y'all have been working really hard on it and been kind of watching COC conversations, but it's good to have a chance to just kind of ask some questions. I guess the question I kind of have is like, how will we know this targeted response will be successful? Like, what are the intended outcomes? What are the metrics? Like, how will we know? Or is this an expansion of capacity because this is just an unmet need and it's not like we reach a number or it's just like this is an ongoing thing that's going to need to happen. So talk to me a little bit about, because the problem, the why we're doubling down and doing more is just really clear. There's just a lot of unmet need as well as kind of conflict with neighborhoods. And so just how will we know we'll be successful with this?
Certainly both the emergency shelter and the street outreach efforts are the funding streams from the city through the COC are both requiring data to be entered into the HMIS for those efforts. So we'll have really clear data about the number of people who are served and the outcomes for those people. HMIS records exit destination, meaning if you're enrolled in a street outreach project and then you're able to access shelter, then you're exiting that street outreach project into emergency shelter, and that's a very positive outcome for a street outreach initiative. So we'll certainly be able to report out on outcomes and number of people served. I hope that also you and that our community will also have will experience a difference based on this increase in capacity. But the need is extraordinary. I think that has been true. You see that in any community with high housing costs. Absolutely, Helene has had an extraordinary impact on homelessness in our community. And between my own opinion is between the pandemic and the disaster, those are two very big hits for an already under-resourced homelessness response system. And so as that system, it takes time to develop that system. That's very difficult to then also be able to field a bunch of new inflow coming out of a huge crisis that's affected not only the city of Asheville, certainly, but the area. So, for what it's worth, I'm certainly encouraged by everything that's happening in the COC and all of the system development there, and that is long-term work. But partly, I think we are we have the need to do that work because we've not done it in the past in this particular way in our community. So we have some catch up to do, and then again, are fielding a lot of inflow from some extreme situations.
Thanks. That's really helpful. For the upcoming point in time, which I've appreciated participating in these the last several years and look forward to doing it again. So I just find it's a really important way to connect and be in community. Are we asking any specific questions that can help us gather data connecting the current status based on Helene? Because I'm eager to see, like I hear from yourself and other folks working to support the homeless community that they definitely are seeing a big influx, but the data will be nice. So is there a specific question, or are we expecting to learn a lot and have a data update on Helene's impact on this?
Yes, absolutely. Last year in the unsheltered survey, we asked a question. We asked, are you experiencing homelessness as a result of Tropical Storm Helene? And understood from that 35% of people who were unsheltered said yes. So extremely clear impact of the storm. That was, of course, just a couple months after the storm. There is an updated version of that question in the survey for this year that sort of tries to get at, is there a relationship between your current experience of homelessness and Helene, and what is it? So there may be people who lost housing in the storm, have continued to be unsheltered that full time. I suspect that there are a lot of people who were able to access resources for a period of time, maybe patch some things together, but those things have perhaps fallen apart since then. So maybe a bit of a still Helene connected, but maybe not experiencing unsheltered homelessness that full time. But yes, all that is to say there is some content in the survey this year about Helene. Great. All right. Well, thank you again for having me. I'm sorry. Yes.
I think that was just Council Member Hess joining again.
Thanks again for having me. I want to say, from the seat that I'm in, I really again appreciate the city's leadership on this issue and your leadership as City Council on this issue, and particularly in directing these resources through the COC. The COC only works if people buy into it, and the city has really demonstrated significant leadership in that in our community. And I think this is exactly how the COC is designed to work, that the city identifies a priority, makes resources available, participates in the COC's collaborative work to identify best use of those resources, and continues to be at the table. So I appreciate all of your support in what we've been working on.
Thank you, Emily. Kind of jumping in here and just introduce the next topic. This is actually going back up to the consent agenda on Tuesday's meeting. Item F will be to ratify the execution of the lease with Tanger Asheville. And this is the conversation that began in November. This item was on the November agenda, November 13th, I believe it was. And there were questions about coverage and all of the logistics of having this facility as a operations part of the strategy for serving West Asheville. And so Chief Stepp has done a lot with outreach and provided information to council up to this point in time. So Chief Stepp is available to answer to provide a kind of an update on that outreach that's been happening, and then also answer any council questions. So Chief.
Thank you and good morning. Afternoon now, I guess, getting into, but if I could just take just a few minutes to kind of just provide a background and how police, and then I'll take any questions at the end. I think first and foremost, it's just to make sure that you all have an understanding that officers are not assigned to a facility. They're actually assigned to a geographic location, and it's the expectation that they patrol the majority of their shift inside of that assigned geographic location. West Asheville has 4 of those. They're called beats. They have 4 beats. There's 2 officers assigned per beat, if you will. Haywood Road is our Adam Beat 4. So there's 2 officers that are assigned to that area. The resource centers, particularly 970 Haywood Road, is meant to pop in, use the restroom, eat lunch, do a report if you need to do a report, and then really get back out. And I think, you know, if you look at our end of year crime data, we saw in 2025 a 24% reduction in violent crime. And that is a huge accomplishment for any police department of any size to be able to accomplish. We also saw an increase in officer proactivity by 3,000 hours. And what that means is they're in those areas doing what they're supposed to be doing. I just give you those quick numbers to say those numbers don't happen from officers sitting in facilities. We started searching for a new facility in West Asheville about 2 years ago, and that's why it was part of the budget process. The Tanger lease was part of the FY26 budget process and approved by council. And we moved forward with what we would say is expanding our services in West Asheville. We have always communicated to the city, to Capitol, that we will have more of a limited presence at 970 Haywood Road. We don't plan to vacate 970 Haywood Road, but there is a limitation with 970 Haywood Road. There are some security vulnerabilities that we've expressed for quite some time. Particularly, it's a library built in 1953 with really no updates. It's got the single pane windows on the front of the facility from desk to ceiling height. And our officers who work out of that facility have, over the years, really since they moved in approximately 99, expressed concerns about feeling secure and safe in their own facility because of those single pane windows facing the road. So we started looking a few years ago. Great partnership with Tanger. They really came to the table during the hurricane, and we developed a good partnership. So they are upfitting that facility at their cost. It's a 10-year lease with 2 options to renew, 2 5-year options to renew. And that facility will be able to provide things that West Asheville cannot provide due to its limited site constraints, such as parking. Current parking at 970 Haywood Road, I think we've got 7 spaces in the front, some shared spaces in the back, and then we have to park off-site at the church in the back, which if you all recall, we also had 2 of our police vehicles burned in that parking lot. So again, that just goes back to the employee wellness aspect. Tanger will also provide, and what we're most excited about is a police information desk. And what that means is a secure facility for us to be able to staff a professional staff member, which is someone who is not a sworn police officer, but trained to take police reports and help people as they walk in, like we do here at headquarters. The only other station that has that is Station 13, which was the purpose-built public safety station. So we are excited to be able to expand those resources out more into the community. The Tanger will also provide officers with a small gym space to work out, something that 970 Haywood Road just can't do, again, just due to the site constraints. We're talking 1,800 square feet at 970 Haywood Road compared to 4,000 square feet at the Tanger Outlet Mall. I also want to point out that we have another police station that a lot of people often forget about at Fire Station 10 on Old Haywood Road. So West Asheville has now, moving forward, will have a substation in Beat 4 Haywood Road, Beat 1 off Old Haywood Road, Smoky Park, and now in Beat 3 Tanger. So West Asheville actually has more police resource stations, more police services than any other district in the city. And I think that's just been miscommunicated, that we are vacating and leaving and going to the Tanger when actually the police views it as an expansion of our police services. So I hope that's just a kind of broad overview. And then I'm happy to answer any questions. I will say, as the Assistant City Manager said, that we've done a lot of community outreach over the last few months. We've met with Malvern Hills, Iwana, WABA. I did reach out to the Heart of West Asheville Business Association December 8th and did not hear back, but we have tried. We went door to door on Haywood Road to meet with businesses to make sure that they understand what is happening, because I think there's been a little bit of miscommunication around our resource stations in West Asheville. And overall, I think we feel very confident that the community understands that police services will not change because of adding that extra facility in West Asheville. Happy to take any questions, and if I didn't hit anything, Jade, that you want me to hit, I'm happy to touch on anything further.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, certainly open for any questions, Council.
So we've already entered into a lease, right?
That's correct. The lease was signed by the city manager's office in October 2025. The budget was passed with the last budget process.
And so what would happen if we didn't move forward? I guess that's a Brad question.
I'll defer to Brad on that one. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Interim Chief. The short answer is that we would be potentially liable under the lease, especially for the upfit dollars. That's upwards of perhaps $1 million of upfit costs that are being donated essentially as part of this transition. So there is considerable financial liability exposure for the option of the city not entering into this lease.
Okay, thanks. Maggie?
Yeah, just I was similar line of questioning. Why were we not authorized? Why weren't we not asked to approve the lease before it was signed? What was the timing that we're being asked to do this after the fact?
I thought we did that in the budget. Wasn't that one of the budget considerations? I feel like there's a lease and a contract, although I thought a lease was a contract.
You are correct. And I can defer to Brad or Jade from a purchasing standpoint, but I'm happy to take this one as well. But yes, the lease was signed, but because there's a lease, the city also requires a contract that goes before council. The contract is what is now before council.
Yeah, so we're now in a position that if we are no longer in support of it, it breaches the contract. So I'm just, there's like a 2-month lag between that. I'm curious, what was that timing discrepancy?
Okay, wait, maybe I'm misunderstanding. Did we, in this last budget, set aside funds for this endeavor?
Yes, the last budget authorized entering into the lease. I don't know that there's a specific line in there, but it did actually have a budget allocation for entering into this lease. I would presume that the annual lease amounts for these leases are under the city manager's authorization threshold. $72,000 is the first year's lease. I would imagine that it was probably entered into as the first year of the lease. And then, but to continue those leases beyond that first year, then that requires the city council authorization. Now, I'm speculating a little bit there, Brad. So I don't know if you have any additional knowledge, but that would be what I would expect.
Thank you, Jay. One thing I think I can add to this is that this is really best described as a multi-step process that has a few different steps where council would weigh in. The really important initial step, which has already been mentioned, is council's initial approval of the budget, the funds that started this process, that allow this train to leave the station. We only can come back to council realistically for approval of the lease once we've actually gotten to the point where we've negotiated and have an agreement. But in order to even begin those steps, we needed to know that council approved the outlay of the funds to get this process started. So we could have hypothetically done all of that at the same time, but it would have been very, very preliminary to ask you to approve a lease at the same time as the budget, since at that point we had not even begun really finalizing those terms. And we don't like to bring those things to you till we can be more specific about those. So again, I think best characterized as a multi-step process where council's first ability to make some decisions on this really was the budget. This is, for lack of a better term, the end of the line to finalize just the documentation that memorializes that final lease. And again, I can only speak to the legalities of the process. The terms of this is really, I think, maybe better from the manager's office if they have anything to add.
Okay, that's helpful. I mean, we authorize a $250 million budget, and definitely every line item of $72,000 isn't necessarily. So the police were expanding some type of expansion. The specifics of it were then negotiated by staff, and then we're becoming aware of that now. I had another question that wasn't about the financials, but Chief, step kind of to some of what you were sharing, that you're seeing this more as broadening coverage as opposed to discontinuing something in West Asheville. Does the Haywood Road station currently have walk-ins from citizens or businesses? Like, can you just talk, because something I heard you saying was it's not a place where currently a bunch of cops are sitting and handling interface with folks who experience crimes, that really we want folks out in community. But is it are there walk-ins? How does that work? Is it a resource center where folks can access on foot, or can you talk a little bit about that dynamic of it being a resource for the neighborhood?
Sure. So currently, periodically, you will get lucky and have a walk up if you're there. But it's a matter of you've got to catch an officer there who is using the restroom or just, stopping by. Whereas Tanger will have a designated professional staff member during business hours, full-time, ready to accept anyone that walks in and take reports, etc. West Asheville, Haywood Road, and even Old Haywood Road, you just have to get lucky to find an officer there or call the non-emergency number when you're there. Generally, that's what happens, and then an officer will come and meet you at that location.
Okay, and then the reason to put them at Tanger is just because the ability to retrofit that space for the safety requirements to have a on-call person or a person on site just hasn't been looked at for Haywood Road. It's only been looked at for Tanger.
There's too many site constraints, and the capital investment that it would take to upfit and make that space ready, purpose built, is astronomical. And I would say too, we also look at it as an opportunity for victims of crime who, Haywood Road it's right there on Haywood Road. You park at the front, you walk in the front door, it says police station. So a lot of times you don't get people who stop by those police stations because of that reason. You don't know if the offender or somebody could drive by and potentially retaliate. So we look at Tanger as an opportunity too, to where somebody may be more inclined to stop into the location that's a lot more discreet if they're just out shopping or have a reason to leave and go out and then just stop in. So we are hopeful that we will see a lot more people just coming in and reporting and engaging.
Great. And then my last question is, if this moves forward, what will remain at the Haywood Road site? Will anything?
Yeah, we will still be there. It's got a couple of offices that the supervisors will likely go over to Tanger. The district commander would go over to Tanger, but the police officers who are assigned to that geographic location, that will always be a police resource center for them to do what they do now. It's really not going to change a whole lot. We are working with Capital because of the security concerns that have continued to be brought to us, and the primary reason we went looking for a new resource center, that some of those security concerns need to be addressed, like the single pane windows, the glass door, upon entrance. So we're going to continue to work with Capital to make some of those smaller improvements to where we can maintain a police footprint at that facility.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Ronnie?
Thank you, Chief Step. I know that one of the things that I'm hearing from businesses and residents and neighborhood associations in West Asheville is that visibility is part of what they're expecting. Foot patrols, relationship building, community policing is what I hear. So when we were engaging as an organization, the businesses and hopefully the residents, can you speak to which business organizations have been engaged, and if you've been able to engage any of the neighborhood associations, for example, that also had similar concerns?
We went door to door. I'd have to get with our patrol captain. He's the one that went out and did that. But again, we met with WABA, Iwana, Malvern Hills. I tried to reach out to Heart of West Asheville Business Association. I did meet with some neighbors in West Asheville. So we have engaged. But again, and what I tell and have told all of them is the numbers speak for themselves. The proactivity numbers, they're not made in the facility in an office sitting there. They have to be out engaged in the community. And I think when you talk about a 3,000 hour increase in officer proactivity, we are doing what we're saying. We are out in the beat. We're out in our areas, especially when you talk about the reduction of violent crime. We saw a huge reduction in homicide. We went from 13 in 2024 to 6 in 2025. We saw a reduction in traffic fatalities, the lowest we've seen since 2019. We had really just such an incredible year last year when it comes to crime data. It's not just from the officer proactivity, but it's from the investigations, it's from our community partnerships, and it's from those residents who we have relationships with who continue to step forward and help us fight crime. So I think last year demonstrates our community policing effort, the relationships that we have and continue to build. It also demonstrates what we can do when we start to restaff our police department. We just released 15 new officers out in the field over the last couple of months. We've got 20 getting ready to graduate. So I think That's the message, is the numbers are speaking for themselves. And I did tell everyone that I met with personally that if they saw a change in policing, that they were to call me immediately.
What were some of the general concerns you heard and staff heard with their outreach with the businesses and residents?
Some is just they like the police car sitting at the resource center. That was the biggest thing, is that kind of false perception of safety because there's a police car there. But again, remember, when the police car is there, generally speaking, the officer is inside, with their equipment off, using the restroom, really, hopefully, just kind of trying to disengage, decompress for just a few minutes before they go back out on the street. What I try to tell them is you actually don't want to see a car at the resource center. You want to see the car in the assigned geographic location where it's supposed to be, because that's where you have an impact on crime, not sitting at the station.
So my understanding is that, and can you confirm that the conversation around a new facility actually started 2 years ago? So would that have been 2 budget cycles ago, or is it just this most recent budget cycle that we're in?
The budget cycle that we are in. So we started we actually, Tanger approached the police department under Chief David Zach about their ability to be able to partner with us and potentially look at the possibility of a resource station. That did not move forward. We weren't in a position then. And then, unfortunately, the Hurricane Helene hit. And then that's where that kind of partnership redeveloped. And then that's when we put it into the budget process this year.
Thank you for that clarity. I think I heard you say that there's a new beat area. If I remember right, it's number 3, and it is the outlets. So how many staff will be assigned to that new location?
That's not a new location. Tanger falls within our already assigned beat 3. There's 4 beats in West Asheville. That just happens to be beat 3. And there are 2 officers assigned per beat in West Asheville. And I will also say, West Asheville, like everywhere, is a priority for us, but they have 2 vacancies in their entire roster, which is the lowest vacancy rate of any other district in the city.
Okay, thank you. I think what it seems to be bubbling up when I'm talking to business groups, whether I'm talking to residential neighborhood groups that are formal, or my own walking down the Haywood Road corridor and talking to businesses and workers and residents, was that the process seemed like the decision was already made. And so that kind of not having a line item, not showing our plans, has led to the narrative that we're in now, that it feels like leaving, taking resources away. And so in the future, putting the community conversation in front would grow trust. Instead of what we have now, it seems like we're now having to respond and try to regain or scrape up some trust. So that would be my hope moving forward, is that we can put the community conversation in the beginning. Thank you.
Jackie, you're muted. If you're.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you for mentioning that. And I actually echo your sentiment around that. Hindsight's 2020, and there'll definitely be more of that engagement on the front end moving forward.
I see the mayor. It looks like Bo has a question.
Councilmember Hess, yeah.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And thank you, Chief Stepp. Yeah, it feels like, and I hear what Sav is saying, that the process is just a little out of order. And from my conversations with residents in West Asheville, businesses, I think they feel kind of like at this moment, it's like a no man's land, and just there's not really a big presence or enforcement over there. And so this feels like a kick in the stomach to them. And I think that's the undercurrent of kind of what you're hearing. So I'm really worried about this. And I just hope that we can, just show the community that we really are there for them, and we want a functioning, safe city.
Thank you. I agree. And hopefully, Councilman Hess, as you get those phone calls, we provide those quarterly updates in our public safety committee meetings. And as I reported in Q3, West Asheville alone had a 40% increase in officer proactivity, and also had a 20% reduction in violent crime. So I really hope as we give those presentations, that as you field those calls, that you help us educate the community together as partners on what's really happening and what officers are doing in their areas.
Councilman Ronnie, do you have another question or? Okay. Anybody else on this topic? Great. And just want to thank you again, Chief Stepp, for your leadership, and appreciate all that you and your team do for Asheville. So with that brings us to our last agenda item, which is just a reminder, Council. Today at 3:30 in the council chamber, we'll have our swearing in ceremony for DK Wesley, who will be our next city manager. And really excited about that. DK will officially start on Monday. So your council meeting will be her first council meeting and her second day with the city of Asheville as city manager. Following that at 4 p.m., we're going to walk over to Pax Tavern and have a welcome reception for DK. So I really hope that all of you will be able to join us today for that. And Councilman Ronnie.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, though, the staff wasn't able to find a time for us to have the swearing in when we could all be there, and I won't be able to be there. I'm very excited to work with our new city manager, DK Wesley. I think her leadership is an exciting time for our city and our region, and I look forward to working with her in this new role.
Great. And Councilman Roney, I'm sure she's watching today and appreciates those comments. So I'll turn it back over to you, Vice Chair, to close the meeting out from here.
Okay.
So thank you.
Certainly, and I see the mayor. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm thank you, Vice Mayor, so much for sharing this while I've been traveling, and I apologize to everyone. I've been traveling during this meeting and off camera.
But if there's nothing else, I think we can go ahead and adjourn, right, Mayor?
Great, thanks.
Okay. See everyone later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.